back to sort of some of the fundamental theory that everyone's familiar with in finance, right? I mean, go back to the 1950s, Harry Markowitz, and then Sharpe and Trainer, they sort of described an optimal portfolio allocation framework where you allocate to a maximally diversified portfolio or an optimal max Sharpe portfolio. And then if that portfolio is not expected to deliver the returns you need, then you simply borrow at the risk-free rate and lever the portfolio up to generate that excess return that you require. It's very difficult for retail investors, for most advisors, even for small institutions, to borrow using margin, for example, at rates that make that theoretical framework work in practice. What's great about the setup as designed by the Wisdom Tree ETF, for example, is you're using futures to achieve that leverage on that core portfolio, which means that you're borrowing at a rate that is consistent with what the largest, most liquid, most creditworthy institutions in the world are borrowing at. And you're able to use that borrowing rate to allocate to, the other 33% of the portfolio. So the hurdle to generate an excess return on that 33% of the portfolio is as low as anyone can conceivably get, right? It's a very, very low hurdle because you're borrowing at such a cheap rate. So almost anything that you layer on there that has a reasonable probability of generating either a risk premium or some sort of alpha is likely to be long-term accretive. I think that shouldn't be overlooked.
Yeah, that financing rate comment is really important, right? Because if we tried to do this, I opened up like an interactive broker's account and tried to say, okay, I've got my 90% equity and I want to borrow against my 10% collateral to buy treasury futures or whatever it is, or not treasury futures, to buy treasury bonds or something else. The borrowing rate they're going to give me is not going to be the financing rate that's embedded in treasury futures. They're going to charge me a much more significant premium, which makes that hurdle rate we have to overcome with the returns of whatever we're stacking on top that much higher. So, a lot of the questions we've gotten is, well, does it matter what you lever up? And the way I look at it from a portfolio construction perspective is operationally, it kind of does sometimes, but for the most part, you're looking at you're long a big portfolio and then you're short a financing rate. And your goal should be to get that financing rate as low as possible. So using things like treasury futures are not only potentially more tax efficient than buying treasury bonds, but the embedded financing rate is incredibly low.
Yeah. And I will say that what's interesting is, if I can share my screen, when we compared the 67 cents on the dollar onto NTSX and the 33% in not even cash, I literally just made a zero yielding cash, in contrast to the Vanguard Balance Fund. All right, I'm sharing right now. You guys see my screen?
We could. Now we can.
All right, so figure 4 in the paper shows the Vanguard VBINX fund. This is a 6040 fund. Right next to $67 to NTSX and the rest in zero yielding cash. And the performance is identical. And this is because that product uses the cheapest possible leverage you can get on treasuries. If I had added 33%, if I had added a cash yield on that, even though it's very low, you're going to be able to bump up your portfolio by that whatever money market fund that you can find. Right, so it is that cheap. This is not theoretical anymore. This is real life results of being able to apply this structural alpha to a product.